I never thought the thing that would finally break me wasn't the budget cuts or the endless committee meetings, but a stolen name on a PDF. My name's Dana Ruiz. I'm 47, been a lecturer at a mid-sized public university in New Mexico for the past 13 years. I teach environmental systems, wildfire ecology, and I've mentored more students than I can count. I don't have tenure. Never did. Not because I wasn't good enough. I just wasn't loud enough. For the past 3 years, I'd been running a research project with 4 brilliant undergrads, Jonah, Serena, Ty, and May. We were working on a post-burn soil remediation system, something that could actually make scorched land usable again. I spent my weekends hiking into blackened forests with the students, collecting samples, hauling gear in the back of my old Subaru. We ran tests in a lab that smelled like moldy coffee and pine ash. I funded half the equipment myself because the school only approved priority grants, which apparently didn't include wildfire recovery unless it had a flashy tech angle. We were onto something real. Our data showed a consistent 60% increase in soil reactivity and moisture retention using our microbe matrix. The students were fired up. I was fired up. For once, it felt like something I built, slowly, painfully, was about to matter. Then came the grant cycle. Every spring, faculty members submit proposals to the university's internal grant system. It's competitive. If you get picked, your project gets highlighted for federal submission and matched with department resources. We submitted on time. My name was on it. The students were credited. I knew our project wasn't just good. It was necessary. New Mexico's had 4 megafires in 5 years. What we were doing could actually help. A week later, Dr. William Haynes, our department chair, asked to see me. He was concerned about structure. He said that because I wasn't on a tenure track line, our project wouldn't be eligible for flagship status. But I'm the PI, I said. He smiled. That's the issue. I should have walked out then, but I didn't. I still believed in playing fair. The next day, Jonah knocked on my office door, pale and shaking. He didn't say anything, just handed me his phone. On the screen was a PDF copy of the updated proposal. My name? Gone. Under lead investigator, it now read, primary faculty, Dr. William Haynes, Dr. Chris Mann, Dr. Jared Lockwood. None of them had lifted a finger on the project. Where did you get this? I asked. They left it open on the department printer, Jonah whispered. I thought you knew. I didn't. And I felt something sink in my chest like wet concrete. These men, the ones who'd smiled at my brown bag presentations, nodded politely during research updates, told me I was such a good mentor, had erased me. I emailed Haynes immediately. He responded 20 minutes later. Dana, I understand this feels personal, but we're thinking about long-term impact. The university needs principal investigators with secured lines. This doesn't reflect on your work. It's just how academia works. No apology. No explanation. Just cold policy dressed up like logic. I cried in the lab that night. After everyone left, I sat next to the soil incubator and just sobbed. Not because I didn't see it coming, but because I still thought, somehow, doing the work would be enough. I thought that would be the worst of it. But then, 2 nights later, I got an email from Jonah. Subject line, you need to see this. He'd attached a screenshot from the internal department calendar. Dr. Haynes, Dr. Mann, and Dr. Lockwood were scheduled to present our wildfire soil system at the National Climate Solutions Conference next month as keynote speakers, and just like that, I realized they weren't just stealing my name. They were about to take my life's work, unto. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the screenshot Jonah had sent me. 3 names that didn't belong, standing where mine used to be. 3 men preparing to give a keynote about work they didn't even understand. I could still hear Dr. Haynes' voice in that meeting. It's just how academia works. I guess I always knew the system was broken. I just didn't expect it to break on me like this. The next morning, I walked straight into Haynes' office. No knocking, just walked in and shut the door behind me. He looked up, surprised. "Dana, do you take my name off a federal proposal again?" I said, "and you'll be explaining it under oath." That got his attention. He blinked once, then set his pen down, all calm authority. "Let's not make this emotional." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insulting. "You stole a research project I spent 3 years building, and you're asking me to be rational about it?" He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled like some kind of discount Bond villain. "You don't have tenure. You don't have voting rights on faculty committees. You're not even published in a Tier 1 journal. Be honest, Dana. If this project was so important, why didn't you do more to protect it?" My mouth went dry. Because he was right. Technically. I'd always put the students first. I'd skipped conferences to help Serena finish her graduate applications. I never promoted the project because I thought the data would speak for itself. I trusted the system. That was my mistake. I didn't answer him. I just walked out. And I didn't go back to my office either. I went home, locked the door, and cried for 4 straight hours. Not pretty tears, ugly, snot-dripping, stomach-cramping sobs. The kind that come from being erased, not just professionally, but existentially. Like I'd never mattered in the first place. I couldn't tell my parents. They never understood why I didn't just become a real professor. I couldn't tell my friends. Most of them thought I played with dirt for a living. And I sure as hell couldn't tell the students. They looked up to me. What would I even say? "Hey guys, everything we built is being presented under someone else's name. Welcome to academia." But then, something shifted. That night, out of sheer rage or survival instinct, I opened my email archive and started digging. Every research log, every soil analysis, every lab report, every Google Doc edit history. I found the original grant proposal, my name, my timestamp. I pulled up photos. Me in the field, covered in soot, holding sampling tubes. Me and Jonah reworking the code. May tweaking the matrix ratios. Not a single faculty name in sight. And then I remembered something else. 6 months ago, I'd applied for a small pilot grant through an environmental nonprofit. I'd done it on a whim. The stipend was peanuts, but I'd used my own name. I had the application, the signed approval letter, the progress reports, all showing the original version of our soil recovery model, before any university hands touched it. That version wasn't owned by the department. It was mine. And suddenly, when I tell you I saw red, I mean it. After Jonah told me they were filing for a patent under Dr. Lockwood's name, I didn't sleep for 48 hours. I was angry, yes. But more than that, I felt invisible. Like all those years of careful work and mentorship meant absolutely nothing. Just another disposable lecturer. But here's what they didn't know. 6 months earlier, before I ever submitted the university proposal, I'd been working on a parallel version of the soil matrix. Not to be sneaky. I just didn't think the university would care. I ran the early tests from my garage, using equipment I'd bought from an old USDA auction. The samples were stored in my freezer next to microwave burritos and dog food. I documented everything. Every test result. Every failure, every breakthrough. All time-stamped. All backed up. That version? That refined version? It was mine. Not the university's, not the department's. Mine. So when Elise, my former student turned journalist, asked if I had anything more, I gave her the full package. She was dead serious now. Said she was pitching it as a feature. And not just about me, but about the pattern of non-tenured women being erased in environmental research. But I didn't stop there. I called in a favor from another former student, Carly, who now worked at an international climate think tank. They'd been looking for scalable wildfire remediation models that didn't rely on expensive tech. I sent them my version. They called back within 48 hours. The lead scientist practically shouted over the phone, "Where the hell has this been?" And then came the question I wasn't expecting. Would you be open to licensing it internationally? Under your own name, of course. I said yes. The deal moved fast. They weren't some bloated academic institution. They saw something that worked and moved. By the end of the week, they had signed a provisional agreement to fund a full-scale rollout across burned zones in Chile and Southern Europe. With my name on every single document, I hadn't felt that kind of adrenaline since I was 20, but the high didn't last long. 3 days later, the university blasted out a campus-wide press release. Department of Earth Systems faculty selected as keynote speakers at National Climate Solutions Conference. Attached was a photo of Haynes, Lockwood, and Mann, all standing next to a burnt tree with my soil sample markers still visible in the frame. They hadn't even bothered to crop me out. I forwarded the press release to Elise. She didn't reply with words, just a screenshot of her article title, already scheduled to publish at 9 a.m. Monday. The missing name on the soil solution, how academia silences the women who build it. I felt my hands shake. That same night, I opened the updated slide deck Jonah had somehow managed to get from a student intern. Page 12 hit me like a freight train. They had included my original microbe diagram. Not a version of it. Not a redraw. My exact hand-drawn sketch. Watermarked. Cropped. And in the bottom right corner, barely visible, they'd left the file name embedded in the image metadata. It said d_Ruiz_lab_matrix_v6_final.psd. My name. Still right there. Still visible. And yet they'd stood in front of funders, peers, and policymakers, pretending it wasn't mine. That's when I made the call. I contacted the legal team at the think tank. I told them about the diagram, the patent filing, the upcoming keynote. Their reply was fast and brutal. If that image shows up at the conference, it constitutes IP infringement. We'll issue a public cease and desist, naming both the university and the individual faculty members. We'll also freeze any pending federal grants attached to the dataset. It was done. Monday morning, 10:17 a.m., just as the conference live stream started, the university pulled the presentation. Quietly. No explanation. Later that day, I got an anonymous email from someone inside the department. You nuked them. Faculty is in full panic. Haynes is blaming Lockwood. Lockwood's blaming you. Everyone's scrambling. But the twist came 2 days later. Elise's article dropped. It went viral in under 4 hours. But not just because of the data. Because one of the 4 student authors, Serena, commented publicly. On the record. She said, Dana Ruiz is the reason I got into environmental science. Watching the department erase her work made me realize how fragile recognition is, especially for women who aren't protected by titles. I'm not afraid to say this anymore. They lied. I sat at my kitchen table, rereading her quote over and over, and I just broke. I wasn't prepared for that part. The grief behind the win. The loneliness of knowing I was right, but still so tired of having to prove it. If you've ever had your work taken from you, if you've ever been called too emotional or not important enough to credit, I see you. I'm with you. We're not invisible. They just counted on us stay. The morning of the conference, I was sitting in the back of a dusty motel cafe, nursing a stale cup of coffee and trying not to throw up. It wasn't stage fright. I wasn't presenting. They were. Dr. Haynes, Dr. Lockwood, Dr. Mann. 3 men in ironed suits about to stand on stage and pitch my life's work like it was some group effort they'd overseen. What they didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that I'd already set things in motion. 2 days before the event, I'd submitted a legal warning to the conference organizers through my attorney, courtesy of the climate think tank who'd licensed my version of the algorithm. It stated that any use of specific images, diagrams, or proprietary data from the Ruiz matrix would be a violation of international licensing agreements and subject to civil action. The organizers replied within 6 hours, panicked but professional. They weren't going to cancel the keynote. They were too far in, but they'd monitor for possible infringement. Which, translated from admin speak, meant, we're letting it happen, but we're scared. I wasn't done. I booked a last-minute flight, packed a single carry-on. Didn't tell anyone except Elise, who was already there covering the event. I didn't go to confront them. At least not directly. I went to watch. And so at 10:03 a.m., I slid quietly into a seat in the very back of the main ballroom, hoodie pulled up, notebook in hand. They took the stage like royalty. Dr. Haynes did his usual arm-waving introduction. We're proud to share a revolutionary approach to soil regeneration after wildfire, developed at our institution by our talented research team. Our, as in, plural. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste blood. Then came the slides. They used my data, my structure, my diagrams, except they'd been edited. Instead of crediting the Ruiz matrix, the slide now said Haynes Lab Optimization Model. I actually laughed. Out loud. One bitter, stunned bark. People around me glanced over. I didn't care. And then, as the panelists clicked to slide 12, the big reveal, the room shifted. Because the diagram looked off. Not wrong, just cluttered. And at the very bottom corner, behind the corporate watermark, someone had accidentally left part of the original image tag visible. It said, Source, Ruiz Research Group, Licensed Content, version 2.1 inches. It was subtle. Most people wouldn't notice, but one person did. A man near the front row stood up, clean suit, conference badge, mic in hand. He said loud and clear, Excuse me. Can you clarify your licensing arrangement with Ruiz Group? This diagram appears to match their proprietary system almost exactly. The panel froze. Dr. Lockwood stammered something about collaboration, but then Elise, bless her bold, chaotic soul, stood up too, press badge clearly visible. She held up a printout of the original licensing announcement from the Climate Initiative, circled in red. Exclusive rights to all versions of the Ruiz Wildfire Soil Matrix, including visual and structural derivatives. Gasps. Actual gasps. The moderator tried to regain control, but it was too late. The seed was planted. The panel ended in rushed apologies and we'll follow up promises. I slipped out before they could see me. But the twist? It came later that night. My phone buzzed while I was lying on the motel bed, halfway into a microwaved burrito. It was from Carly, the lead scientist at the think tank. Hey, just got a tip from someone inside your old department. Thought you should know. Haynes submitted a secondary proposal to the Department of Energy 3 weeks ago, using your exact matrix, no attribution. And now that this is blowing up, he's trying to quietly withdraw it. I sat there, stunned. He didn't just try to steal my work. He tried to monetize it federally, twice, and only backed off when it risked blowing up in his face. I should have felt triumphant, but instead I felt hollow, worn. Because the truth is, even after all that noise, the erasure still left something raw in me. Something nobody clapped for. And if you've ever had someone take your work, your voice, and sell it under their own name, then you know what I mean. It's not just betrayal, it's grief. And if you're still carrying that kind of silence in your chest, I just want you to know, you're not alone. 1 year to the day after they told me to step aside for the good of the department, I stood at the front of a glass-walled boardroom, staring out at a skyline I never thought I'd work beneath. The Santiago pilot had been a success. More than that, it had sparked regional partnerships, environmental funding, even policy conversations. We'd secured multi-year contracts to expand the Ruiz Matrix into wildfire-prone zones across 4 continents. And now, for the first time in my life, I wasn't reporting up to someone who barely knew my name. I was the report. That morning, I'd led the first full-team innovation review with my new lab. 5 of the original students were there, along with a few more hires I'd personally picked. And for the first time in years, nobody asked if I needed someone to review my slides before I presented. But just as we were wrapping up, my assistant knocked softly and handed me an envelope. I opened it, expecting a grant confirmation. It wasn't. It was a formal apology letter from the university, signed by their interim president. Acknowledge of institutional failings. Public recognition of my role as the original author and architect of the wildfire remediation model. But that wasn't the twist. Tucked inside the envelope was a printed excerpt from the Department of Energy's weekly report. One short paragraph near the bottom of page 3. Grant application number 43,721, originally submitted under the name W. Haynes et al., has been withdrawn following internal investigation. Formal review of academic misconduct procedures is ongoing. They were under federal review. Federal. I didn't cry. Not this time. I just sat very still in that quiet, sun-drenched room, feeling the way trees must feel when fire finally gives way to new green. Not angry, not even vindicated. Just free. I spent the evening preparing for my keynote at the annual Women in Science and Innovation Summit. When the time came, I stood beneath warm lighting, looked out at hundreds of faces, young, old, determined, tired, and told the truth. Not the polished, PR-friendly version. I talked about erasure, about being told that quiet work doesn't matter unless it's packaged by someone louder, about watching students get disillusioned by a system that claimed to protect them. And then, I showed the audience something I hadn't shared before. It was a photo from the first day of field testing, taken by Serena. Me kneeling in the dirt, laughing with mud on my hands and a sample bag tucked under one arm. In the corner, written in faded Sharpie on a clipboard, was my name. Dana Ruiz. No titles, no credentials. Just the name of someone who'd showed up even when no one was watching. I closed with this. If you teach people to build roots, they don't stay invisible. They grow, they spread, and one day they hold the ground steady when the fire comes. The room stood up. Not for me, but for every person who'd ever been told their work wasn't worth putting on paper. The lesson I took? Recognition doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from documenting well and refusing to vanish. And if you're still fighting to be seen, I hope this reminds you to keep your records, hold your ground, and never let them tell you it's just how the system works. If you've been through something like this, or even if you're in it right now, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Seriously, you're not alone. And if you want to hear more stories like this, just stick around. I'm not done yet.